Okay. So now recording is started. So okay. So your first question would be, what are the memories used, right? CPU memory, RAM
Mhm.
memory, and hard disk memory. Yeah. So if you
Yeah.
see from the computer perspective, right, what kind of memory is there
Mhm.
in your laptop or your computer? You tell me.
Yeah, RAM memory, hard disk memory,
Uh, so
and
these
any
are
external memory, CPU like pen drive
correct.
or anything. Yeah.
So there are two things. We can categorize this memory in two parts, right? One is called primary memory and another is called the secondary memory, right? So primary
Yeah.
memory sits as your RAM and ROM, right? RAM and ROM means which
Mhm.
are attached to the motherboard, right? Computer motherboard.
Yeah.
RAM is looks like
Yeah.
this, okay? And ROM is kind of a
Mhm.
chip, right? And then whatever you
Yeah.
are saying, the hard disks, external hard disk even now they come the SSD, right? That solid state drive, before it
Yeah.
was normal. So all this comes under the secondary memory, right? So these are the only memories
Mhm.
available in the whole computer architecture, even for the server also. The server what they put
Yeah.
in the cloud, these are the only memory available, right?
Mhm.
Now
Yeah.
how this
Yeah.
memory affects in our programming, correct? That's the main thing,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah.
So
Correct. Yeah.
suppose when you say my computer is a heavy computer, that means I can play games and all those things, right? So two main
Mhm.
configuration matters in a computer, right? One is called your CPU, right?
Mhm.
Another is called your RAM, correct? These are the only
Mhm.
two things. You have more CPU power and you have more RAM, you can process bigger
Mhm.
task, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whenever we write any program and all those stuffs, right, it go to the RAM, right? RAM is the memory where the
Mhm.
program sits under, not in the ROM. So what are the
Mhm.
things stored in the ROM? ROM is the thing, I think you have heard about the firmware and all those stuffs, right? Which are required to
Yeah.
run a motherboard, right? So all those things stored in
Mhm.
a chip. That's the permanent storage for the motherboard thing. So those are the things, the ROM. ROM is not used for programming, right? RAM is the only thing used for programming. We write all code in the means basically when my program is running and everything, is RAM talking with the
Mhm.
CPU, right? CPU talking with the RAM and the
Yeah.
whole programming is happening. This is the thing. And where a hard disk coming into the
Mhm.
picture, hard disk is your OS, right? OS we stored in the hard disk,
Mhm.
or any file we store in the hard disk, right? Or your code,
Yeah.
the file dot java file or dot txt file dot
Mhm.
json, all those files sit in the hard disk, but those things are not running, right? So for the running
Yeah.
thing is happening in the RAM, right? It loads in the RAM when you run
Mhm.
your Java ID or something like that. Click
Mhm.
on run button, right? So it's load all the code in
Mhm.
the RAM and RAM talk with the. So RAM give the task to CPU, right? So RAM is the
Mhm.
storage. CPU is not a storage. CPU is the processing unit. It processes your command, right?
Yeah.
These are the in layman
Yeah.
term.
Yeah.
This is how the memory and computer works. Okay.
Mhm.
So this is for
Mhm.
your. This is the explanation for your first question. Do you have any doubt on this?
Where cache memory comes in
Ha,
picture?
those things coming in your I think fifth question or somewhere, right? So
Okay. Okay. Okay.
we'll go
Got
line
it.
by line, okay? So
Mhm.
that I'll
Oh,
cover all
okay.
those things, right? So now the second
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
what are the other storage? So these are the question you told, right? So storage.
Mhm.
So that is your second question. Let's see. Okay. So what are the other storage? File storage, database storage, or anything else which is based of external storage, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So in the storage side, in the computer, if you go out of the programming, right, storage is the this
Mhm.
secondary memory what we are talking about, right? The hard
Mhm.
disk picture, I think have it,
Mhm.
yeah, hard disk, right? That is
Mhm.
kind of a secondary storage, and this can be a storage, right? So in this storage,
Mhm.
I can store file, right? Or
Mhm.
in your local computer, if you install Oracle or if you install
Mhm.
SQL Server, right? Those they
Mhm.
call primary file, secondary file, these are the name. Primary file contain
Mhm.
your data, secondary file contain the log related to Oracle, what transaction are doing. So all those files basically stored in the hard drive only, right? Those are not be
Mhm.
storing sitting here, because RAM is a temporary memory. You off your computer, everything is gone from your RAM is clear, right? So storage is a permanent.
Yeah.
So this is from the computer side storage. Now from the programming side, right? So that is the question about the programming side you are asking about, like file
Mhm.
storage and what kind of storage is there, right?
Okay. Mhm.
So now file storage means what? File storage means you are running a program, right? You wrote on program
Mhm.
and you want to write something in the file.
Mm-hmm.
General example could be log files, right? When you
Yeah.
write code, we put so many logs. Why we put logs? Because so that anything happen in the production server, right, they will not give
Mm-hmm.
you the access of the production server. Hey, someone log to the production server, run this application and debug. It's not possible, right? Production
Yeah,
server is a
yeah.
black box. So you have to write a code such a way that you have to think all the scenarios, that if this exception happen, it should log properly, so that by looking to this exception, I can understand, okay, this is happened. So that is why the log writing also one skill, how much good exception logging you are doing it, right? So suppose you are logging that,
Mm-hmm.
so people use the file storage, sometimes use the file storage for that. It's depend on the requirement. Generally people use file storage. So what happen, all the transactions, all the execution code is happening is keep on writing on that file, and that file will be in the server. There will be a hard disk, right? So it will be stored in
Yeah.
particular drive, right? So it will keep on, this is called
Mm-hmm.
appending. So that they will not, every time
Mm-hmm.
they will not create new file, right? One log file will be created with a particular date. Suppose you set up, it's depend on the library, different libraries are there, and you can set it, right? So suppose you set that every day new log file will be there with the date, the log name. So it will keep on append all your execution. Or any particular day exception happen, you can ask to the production support team, hey, please go to this particular drive, there will be a file name with this, get me that log file so that I can figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a file storage, correct? Or
Mm-hmm.
suppose in your application itself, all the networking devices creating the
Mm-hmm.
data in XML file, right? Correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's create in the
Yeah.
XML file, and I believe those devices will be having a small memory where they keep the, where they store the file, right? Because whenever you create file, you need some storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
they are
Yeah.
not the intelligent device that, okay, you plug something on me and I will store in some in the cloud. They don't have that much. So in their local memory, they'll create the file. Now you created a program architecture which will grab
Mm-hmm.
that and then it will do the processing, whatever processing is required, right? So they have a
Mm-hmm. Okay.
mechanism only for file storage. They can only store the file. Now you can ask me
Mm-hmm.
the question, why not database storage? Because those are called IoT devices. IoT is the Internet of Things, right? They
Mm-hmm.
generally use. So they, all the purpose, they generally create the files, right? Because they don't have the mechanism to connect to database. Because to connect to database, what you need a code. It could be Java code, .NET code, something, right? But those are
Mm-hmm.
the not that kind of programming, right? Those are the different kind of programming. I think devices are wrote programming C++, logic and all, right? So file storage is more
Mm-hmm.
beneficial for them. So they will just dump the data in the file storage, correct?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now suppose I have, it's depend on the scenarios, right? Suppose I have one banking application, correct? So banking
Mm-hmm.
application, I'll be having the user module, credit debit module. So do you think that file storage is useful for, will be used for this kind of scenario? No. We
No,
have to go for
databases.
database storage, because there is one important concept which I think you did not mention it, so let me explain that. That is the transaction data, right? Transaction data
Mm-hmm.
will be storing in the database, because database is giving me one important property which is called ACID property. Have you heard about that?
Mm, yeah, yeah. I heard
ACID
about it.
property,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is the database transactions file will be stored in the, so ACID is a property, is a concept, okay? So A stand
Mm-hmm.
for what? A stand for atomicity, okay? Atomicity, let me write it down all four, then I'll explain. So
Mm-hmm.
these are the database concept, RDBMS concept. So see, you wrote something on top of that I'm giving you, like that we'll go through
Mm-hmm.
something extra also. So your knowledge should be there. So this logic is required while writing the code, okay? So
Mm-hmm. Okay.
suppose
Mm-hmm.
somebody asks you, can you give me a real-time example where I'll go for the database storage? So you need to say
Mm-hmm.
the data, right? The whole data part where I need the ACID property to be implemented, I will go for the
Mm-hmm.
database storage,
Mm-hmm.
transactional
Mm-hmm.
data, because only database can provide me this inbuilt. Oracle also provide, SQL Server also provide, right? File you cannot,
Mm-hmm.
right? You put one file
Yeah.
name called summon.txt to load the data. That
Yeah.
file you
Yeah.
cannot have this one property, right? This is the database RDBMS
Yeah.
concept. So I'll not go for the file based on this kind of scenario. This is just one example I'm giving, right? That could be any
Mm-hmm.
example for this, right? And D for
Mm-hmm.
durability, right? Now what durability? Now let me
Mm-hmm.
quickly explain what is this four concept. What is atomicity, right? So atomicity is
Mm-hmm.
saying that The transaction should be a single unit, atomic means one single unit. Suppose in a banking application from customer A, you are debit some 100 amount and it is going to the customer B. So this debit and credit is a single unit, you cannot differentiate that. Okay, so when the credit happen, debit also should happen. If credit failed, debit also should fail. It's not like that 100 rupees is credited for A and B did not debited, right? So this
Yeah.
is inconsistent. So that is called the atomicity. That is called the unit. Okay, how to implement? I will give some examples. Right? Now let's understand the acid first. Then what is the C? C for consistency, right? That I put some logic. So any database, right, Oracle or SQL Server, you can put rules, you can put constant, right? You will put triggers. So all those rules are executed properly. There is no illegal state or inconsistent test. So that's why the name is called consistency. Whatever rules you put, right? That maybe this amount cannot be negative. Just giving one random example. So that rule, whenever data is getting inserted, that rule satisfy. That is that database job, that engine, SQL Server engine or Oracle engine. File cannot have this mechanism, right? So that's why they're providing. Then isolation. What is the isolation? That when a big bank is there, right? In 1 minute or 1 second, lot of transactions are happening. So each transaction occurs in a isolation mode. Means transaction number one cannot interfere with transaction number two. That means one transaction is happening between customer A and B, and another transaction happening C and D. So A and B are related together. It will not happen A and C, right? Amount A is getting credited with C. It's not possible, right? So that isolation SQL Server maintain, right? And the durability. What is the durability? Means whatever is written in our database, it will be consistent. It will be there. Durability, and the durable English meaning is like that, right? So it will not be removed. Okay, it's written now. After 1 minute, the data is gone, right? File can happen
Yeah.
that if you store local file, it could be corrupted and everything, right? So that's why SQL Server and all maintain a backup. Internally they will maintain a backup and all. So this acid property is very important property which provided by our database storage, which is not possible in a file, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Understood.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this is the called the acid property. So based on this kind of scenarios, you need to figure it out. It will be a file storage and database storage. Though when you say database is a mechanism, but inside internally how the database is storing the data, actually it's a file, right? If you go to inside, we don't suppose we install the SQL Server or install Oracle, you go to the bin folder, there could be a data, right? You see couple of different extensions, those are file only. Data is written on file, but it's a mechanism. From the programming perspective, you should understand, I should write a raw file to write my data, or I should write my data in a database. That is understand how the database is storing data. That's the database mechanism, right? Because when you put in a cloud, SQL Server can be clustered, right? One particular section will be in Mumbai, one particular section will Kolkata, one section might be in America. So those are the cluster, how the database is storing, right? That is not in our headache. But from the coding side, you have to understand this logic.
Yeah.
Going to file and database. Clear?
Yeah. Yeah. Understood.
Okay. Yeah. So then third question is, let me copy that.
Any other way of storage is there apart from these two, file and database?
No, those are the only two, right? Then in the
Okay.
database and all, we have some more logic. Let me see. Did you write anything or? Yeah, you have something on the number four. That time we'll explain it. But mainly the file and database. Okay. Now say
Okay.
which is the expensive, right? So obviously the file read and write is little bit of expensive, right? Because why? When I'm talking about, I'm writing a raw file, right? In your Java program, you can give a path. My file path is this. Open the file, write some big string or big data, 1,000 line of data, right? And then you close the file. These are the all operation you are doing for the file, right? The same thing, the logging mechanism, what I told. So the logging library has this code, inbuilt code they have written. Open the library, so open the file. Suppose is a multi-threading application. That means all thread are going to write on the file, right? So they have to handle the lock. So obviously the file read and write operation is expensive, right? Where
Okay.
database, why the database is easy? Because database is mature. Oracle, SQL Server, or any kind of database, right? They are mature, means they are able to handle multiple connection at a time, right? So you will not see the delay on that. But when you're doing the file operation, you can see the delay, right? Now some company suppose creating a product, okay, and saying, hey, I am doing a file storage, use my program will faster. So they can write a special program, right, to make it faster. But when you're writing a Java code just to write a raw thing in the file storage or write some data in database storage, the DB operation will be good, right? Now again, you cannot like always say like, okay, file storage is expensive, I will not go for that. So when you are choosing the database storage, that means database should be available for you, right? Suppose there is a scenario and there is no database, then you don't have any option, correct? Suppose the devices don't know how to connect to a database, so that's why they are end up with writing a xml file, correct? Suppose the logging mechanism, all log library provide 3 4 kind of functionalities: write to a file or connect to a database, or some of the file can write to that Elasticsearch, Prometheus and all those stuff, they have API, right? So suppose nothing is available, then file writing is the only option available, because obviously the code will be deployed to the server and server will be having minimum storage, right? At least minimum storage will be there to write it, right? So based on the scenarios, but as of now, whenever you write program, database is always there, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So that is your, so is it okay how I am explaining? Are you able to
Yeah,
understand?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, I'm able to
okay,
get
okay,
it, yeah.
okay. So now let's go for the four. How do you decide when to, yes, okay, file storage DB, okay. So fourth question is, how do you decide when to choose in-memory database versus file storage versus DB storage or any other method? Okay, so in-memory database will come when we explain to the cache. Cache, you have one question, I think will come there. Now you have to
Yeah.
decide when to go database and file storage. So here already I explained there are two storage, file and database. So here I am going to go some more depth to explain the cloud technology. Okay, a little bit. So in cloud, what happened? There are four kind of storage is there. Four, basically I think in broad there will be three, okay. So one is called the object storage, correct? So one is called file storage, mainly because it differ in AWS, differ in cloud, okay, differ in, sorry, it Azure, or little bit different JC, but concept wise three thing will be there, okay. Blob storage, and something is object storage, where your MongoDB comes into the picture, right? So file storage, right? They are providing a solution. So file storage means you want the storage to be raw file to be stored, raw file to be stored, right? So those thing called the network attached storage, right? In your local computer or laptop, you just put one external drive, correct? But in cloud environment, when server is there, you need extra file storage, means raw file you want to store, so they will attach through network, right? So that's why it's called network attached storage. What is the reason? There could be multiple reason. You wrote some java program which creating, due to some reason, is creating a file and you need some storage, raw file, .txt, .pdf or .xls, anything. So you should have a file storage, so you will buy in the from the cloud vendor, you will use that particular functionality, file storage, correct? Then it's called a, then let's go back to the object storage, right? So object storage means which is comes in the NoSQL, correct? Object storage is nothing but they generally say as the NoSQL DB, right? NoSQL DB, right? So in the NoSQL DB, all the data are stored as an object. That's why the name as the object storage. Now the product name could be different. Azure, the name could be different. AWS name could be different, right? But the object storage concept is data will be stored as an object, mainly the JSON object, right?
Okay.
So suppose all your that social media content, right? Facebook and all these posts, right? They generally store as an object storage, because object storage is first thing is object storage is a little cheap, okay. So when you if you go to the Google and just compare, right, the compare the cost between Azure file storage, blob storage, object storage, Amazon file storage, blob storage, you can see among these three object storage cost is very less, right? So cost is one more factor, right? Suppose in your application they are all using the open source, why? To reduce the cost, right? When I'll come to the profiler, I will explain that, right? So cost is one main thing. So obviously when they go to the selecting it, when they say okay blob storage is little cheap object, because I know my program can create lot of JSON files, right? So let's use the object storage
Mm-hmm.
because it's cheap and it can
Mm-hmm.
use it and there is no limit. Okay,
Yeah.
so in that scenario we'll go for the object storage. Then in the object storage they will say okay let's see in Azure what are the product they are offering. Okay, they are offering MongoDB, let's use it, right? Correct. And in
Mm-hmm.
this kind of, because I am mainly done the Azure, not much AWS, so in Azure the storage, in the storage concept, right, they have three things to be there. One is called hot, cold and archive. Again that's based on the requirement. Okay, so what is hot means the data which you need frequently, right? That means you are
Mm-hmm.
creating on a dashboard where you are only showing the 1 month data at a time, the recent 1 month, right? So only one
Mm-hmm.
month data analytics you will store in the hot tier, because hot tier cost is little high. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
then cold tier means the last 1 year data. Okay, so there could be
Mm-hmm.
some advanced button or some button will be there, when you clicked it you can go back to the 1 year data and it will come to the dashboard. So that's what's called the cold tier. So cold tier price is little less. And then call the archive tier. Archive means you will archive the file, meaning itself, right? Suppose in your
Mm-hmm.
banking application you store all the 5 years, 10 years. Suppose I use the HDFC bank net banking, right? I see that whenever you want to go last 1 year transaction, right, they are giving an option raise a request. So you'll click on raise the request and it start one batch job. Okay, and it will show batch is processing, come back after 5 minutes. So what they're doing, their
Mm-hmm.
data is not readily available, just 1 month data is available. And when your customer is requesting old data, they are running on batch job to going to the archive folder to get that. It will take some time, right? That's why the archive is price is less, because they are saying boss you have to give me some time, right? So when time is there, so cost is less. So as an architect you have to define, right? See, there is no harm to store 10 years data in a hot. The cost will be more,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then the customer will ask why you design like that. You know the
Mm-hmm.
hot price is high and why I need that, because my dashboard is saying 1 month, then why you're not storing 1 month? So that's the architect job, to define the cost also properly, right?
So this comes here a cloud side, right?
It's a
What you
cloud,
told.
it's a cloud side, right? Because cloud is
Okay.
providing this concept I'm explaining. Correct.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
end of the day,
Understood.
everything they store generally in the cloud right now, because cloud is providing the
Uh-huh.
cluster. And I'll explain some more concept when you go some more down, that will be clear. So that's called object
Okay.
storage. And then blob storage is little costly than the object storage, because what happened, it store the data in a blob, means is they will decide, the cloud vendor decide, but suppose 100 transaction or 100 record they'll put in a blob 1, and 100 another
Mm-hmm.
100 blob 2. So what happened in the blob storage is it's faster, because
Mm-hmm.
suppose you have 10 boxes, right, and in the each boxes you
Mm-hmm.
put 10 cards, and you know from
Mm-hmm.
0 to 10 in the first box, and then 11 to
Mm-hmm.
20 in another box. See, if I ask can you give me 35, card number 35, so you easily go to the box number 3 and from there you pick up 35. So your searching is faster, right? So that is nothing but the blob. They will divide the data in a blob so that faster. So that's why blob storage is faster to access than the object storage. It's little
Mm-hmm.
faster to access. Okay, so that's why cost is
Okay.
little high.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like
Got it.
that,
Yeah.
based, I'm just giving a way like how a architect defined that I should go for this or I go for that storage, right? Correct. And I
Mm-hmm.
told that in one of the concept I told RAM memory is faster, right? Because RAM memory
Yeah.
is near to the CPU, so that's why
Yeah.
execution. Now I can say that my data, whole data is 1 TB of data. Okay, I want
Uh-huh.
to store the whole data in RAM memory. Is it possible? Then I need to have
No.
a 1 TB RAM memory. Then what will happen?
Yeah.
I need a supercomputer. Means the cost will be more,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why the
Yeah.
architect come into the picture. That what kind of
Mm-hmm.
data you need to put in the RAM memory so that your application works. So architect take the decision, that mining decision, to tweak it, right? So that's why the architect come into the picture.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody give me a lot of money, I can build a supercomputer fast like anything, right? But that is not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Cost is the constant,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Correct. Yeah.
So that's how they come into the. So that is for your 4. Now caching. Okay, what is caching and this
Yeah.
caching? Tell me.
Yeah, one question I had. So this so NoSQL is there, no?
Mm-hmm.
So you gave example of object storage
Correct.
NoSQL. So NoSQL will also have these asset properties.
No, that's why it's the object storage, right? No SQL don't have the ACID. So that's why Azure, in the Azure I'm telling, the SQL server created in the blob storage is more of a database. More of a database
Hmm.
means the SQL database in the normal term if we say, right?
Okay.
Okay, but what is the plus point of this one object storage? Object storage is more of a cluster, right?
Hmm.
Right. So in
Okay.
cluster there are some more concepts are there, right? Latency is there, right? So it will,
Hmm.
if you go in depth of that, right? So in
Hmm.
MongoDB, when you are setting a MongoDB, right, you can set the cluster. Okay, so you can
Hmm.
say there are many configurations there. You will not be able to remember those, that they write once, read multiple. So what that meaning is, they will set up a cluster in this way that there will be a master cluster and there will be a slave
Hmm.
cluster, right? So any
Hmm.
transaction, any new transaction is happen, they will write in the master, and automatically all the slave cluster will copy that quickly. Okay,
Hmm.
so what happened, some of the customers are using your analytics. What is your analytics?
Hmm.
Analytics is not writing anything. Your grafana
Hmm.
customer is seeing, right? So it's the
Hmm.
reading purpose, right? So they will set up one master slave where your Java programs run, and it will just run in the one master MongoDB, and automatically
Hmm.
all the client where the grafana, they will see the real data, so it's faster,
Hmm.
right? So it's based on the use cases. Okay,
Okay.
and every cloud has a different logic or running there, right? So mainly object storage where you don't need those ACID properties is not required. So that's why we don't
Hmm.
use NoSQL for banking application. If you go to any banking application, they will see Oracle or SQL Server, mainly Oracle, because Oracle can handle bigger data than SQL Server. They generally go for
Hmm.
Oracle because they need those
Hmm.
property, primary key, secondary key, constant will be there, triggers will be there. All those things not at all possible in NoSQL. You have to write your own
Hmm.
code, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so catching, okay, caching, right? So what is the caching concept? Okay, so caching is nothing but, what is cache? Cache means, why is coming in line number, this is different. This is different, yeah. So what is caching? Caching means, caching will be stored in where? Caching will be stored in RAM. Okay,
Hmm.
because our program sits on the RAM, right? So our
Hmm.
data they always put in the RAM so that is faster, right?
Hmm.
Because our database, the local database also sits in our hard disk, right? When we deploy it,
Hmm.
it's not sitting on the RAM. So RAM is
Yeah.
always faster to get the data. So whenever you
Hmm.
do caching, the data is faster, right? And the
Hmm.
same concept I told, I have a 1 TB
Hmm.
database which is sitting in
Hmm.
my hard drive. Can I put it in
Hmm.
the RAM? It's not possible, right? Because in
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
local is a 16 GB RAM, or maybe the
Hmm.
server high end maybe 32 GB RAM, right? Correct.
Hmm.
You cannot put the whole data. So that's why the
Hmm.
architect come into the picture, what I can cache. So generally what
Hmm.
people do is, again depend on the scenarios. Suppose if you are doing one shopping cart example, right? So the
Hmm.
cart, right? The cart, maybe they want to put it in the cache, the cart details, not the whole product details, right? Amazon has a
Hmm.
1 lakh product. So they cannot store the
Hmm.
1 lakh product details in the cache. It is not at all possible, right?
Hmm.
They can put
Yeah.
the cart details, or they have AI implemented. They see this particular customer always search for this particular category of product. So whenever they
Hmm.
start the login, maybe only those 5 or 10 product they take up and put it in the cache.
Hmm.
Correct? Recording is happening.
Okay.
So those things they can put in the cache. Correct. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
depend. You have to decide what are the things you can cache. It's scenario to scenario
Hmm.
differ. Suppose some master data, right? When you create any application, some data is master data which don't change frequently, or
Hmm.
some data are for common for all the users, right? And whenever user
Hmm.
logged in or go to multiple pages, different pages in
Hmm.
your application, those data is required. That means you figure it out, only this 5 or 10 record is frequently used, and I have the enough memory available. RAM size is good, right? So you can put those things in the caching.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now in caching, there are two concepts. One is called in-memory cache and in-memory database. Okay. So both are storing in the RAM. Both are storing in the RAM.
Mm-hmm.
Both are storing in a RAM, but two different concepts. One is called caching, one is called database. So previously we learned the database is sitting in the hard drive. Here we are seeing the
Mm-hmm.
database sitting in the RAM itself. So obviously this
Right.
database cannot store huge data, right? Correct.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
why we
Yeah.
need, basically again is depend on your
Mm-hmm.
architecture or design decision. Why is like that?
Mm-hmm.
Because in memory caching, right, in memory caching, there are some libraries is also available. Mem cache is there, cache, so many is there. Redis cache is also there. Or even in your java spring boot, right, they have a catchable
Yeah.
interface, right? When you run the spring boot, catchable interface, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
catchable interface, we can write our own class and we can store in the cache itself. Very simple to use. What is cache? Cache is a
Mm-hmm.
key value pair, right? I search in the cache, hey, what is the value of this key? I get it, I display to the UI or program, right? That's a simple caching mechanism. But you are saying no, I need a in-memory database. So when in-memory database is caching plus something, what is this something? Something is extra functionality. Means you need some constant, right? You need some constant, or you need maybe the ACID property. In this small
Mm-hmm.
memory database, you need the ACID property. So we'll go for the
Mm-hmm.
in-memory database. Suppose you are saying, right, that maybe this one, that Grafana was slow, right? So they have implemented in-memory database, right? They did
Yeah.
not
Some
implemented
infinite
caching.
W.
Yeah, because they did not implemented caching. Because caching is a simple key value pair. But in memory
Yeah.
database, it's a database. That means it can hold the time series data. It cannot hold
Mm-hmm.
for a 1 month data, but it can hold maybe for
Mm-hmm.
1 hour data in your scenario, that network data, right? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
1 hour data. But it should be that structure should be same, right? The database structure, the
Mm-hmm.
file structure. So they create an in-memory database, right? So in-memory database, you have Redis. Redis is the mainly they use in-memory database. Other than that, you have Apache Ignite. So many are there. SQLite, which is in the .NET, right? Or even
Mm-hmm.
MongoDB also has some engine memory, but mainly Redis. Whenever you work read and all, Redis is the main thing which is for caching and in-memory database also, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they will mainly the in-memory database you cannot code by yourself. That I will write a code by myself. But caching you can write your own code because this is a key value pair, simple logic. You don't want to go for any third party, simple one. So there's a catchable interface Spring Boot. You just inherit that and write it. But in memory you have to use some third party, right? Like you use the
Mm-hmm.
storage and all, then you have to decide based on the which is free and all. You have to analyze and then you can use it. So that's the basically
Mm-hmm.
different. In memory cache, both are in memory. Don't think that. So the wording should be changed. In memory caching or in memory database, both are in memory. In memory means RAM.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Clear?
So and here,
Hmm.
suppose if it is 16 GB RAM,
Mm-hmm.
then how much of
Yes, that is your
memory
doubt,
can be
right?
used?
Yes. So
Yeah.
you cannot, what is can say, whenever you're writing a first code, right? You cannot say this my code is taking that much RAM or not. So you have to run the
Mm-hmm.
profiler, right? And you have to see how
Mm-hmm.
much. See why the people go for the cloud? Because nobody knows the what is that load, right? So when the
Mm-hmm.
load is increasing, your machine is getting failed. That's why the whole matrix is there. Na? They have the DevOps team is sitting and looking to the Grafana, and they say
Mm-hmm.
put a rules that whenever particular CPU utilization go more than
Mm-hmm.
80%, it will trigger some alert. Or
Mm-hmm.
RAM
Yeah.
utilization, that means my primary memory
Mm-hmm.
utilization go more than 80%, it will trigger alert.
Mm-hmm.
But alert is not gonna help. Here the come into the picture AKSA, Kubernetes cluster,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they set up a rule, right? That whenever 80%, another new machine startup, right? So we'll
Mm-hmm.
learn the how why the Docker image come into the picture, how the cloud, how
Mm-hmm.
the Kubernetes cluster is helping. You get a alert means
Mm-hmm.
what? You will start one more machine. You don't have time for that, right? When Amazon run the
Yeah.
bigger that selling days and all, right? The crowd sometime. Suppose
Mm-hmm.
12 o'clock cloud is
Mm-hmm.
huge, right? So automatically machines are
Mm-hmm.
getting up, right? So that's why they
Mm-hmm.
come into the picture. They will not wait
Mm-hmm.
for, okay, my machine is got destroyed 100%, then new machine comes. Not like that. They put a threshold. 80% means start a new machine. or 90% you
Mm.
start a new machine, something like that. That's why the cloud is come
Mm.
into the picture. No? That manual
Yeah,
thing is
yeah.
gone right now.
Mm-hmm. So say when I'm coding,
Mm-hmm.
so how can I decide how much cache memory or how much in memory, how much data I should put in
Yeah,
memory?
so cache memory,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe when you are writing,
Yeah.
so no, cache memory you cannot decide because it's depend on the RAM size, right? And in
Mm-hmm.
your, it's depend on uh, the program which you're writing, right? You wrote a Java program, example, you write a Java program
Mm-hmm.
which will parse the file, correct? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not a multi-threading application, it's a single thread application, example. So that means
Mm-hmm.
in my folder, my program is looking to a particular folder, and how many files are there, XML file, I pick up one file and start parsing it. That is your job, right? And the single means I can only pick one file, right? So
Mm-hmm.
once you pick the one file, your memory is defined, right? If you run the profile, you see,
Mm-hmm.
okay, to read this 10 MB file, I need this much memory. It's fixed. If you run the same
Mm-hmm.
program to the server, it will work in this way, right? Now you change it
Mm-hmm.
to the multi-threading. That means
Mm-hmm.
at a time, maybe five file it can process. So it's need a more memory, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you decide how many thread you want to run in parallel based on your memory, right?
Okay.
If you say my program can handle only 10, then you will say I
Mm-hmm.
tested my program in my 16 GB RAM, 10 is the max I tested.
Mm-hmm.
So in the server, please go
Mm-hmm.
with 8, right? So all
Mm-hmm.
those parameters you can get it from a profiler. You need to run the profiler, see how the spike and all. That's how you can update to the DevOps team. That is how I tested.
Profiler is plugin something, is it?
Yes, I will come to that profiler section. So J profiler are there. There are some
Okay.
free profiler, some are paid profiler.
Okay.
Okay, we'll come to that. So like that, you have to decide.
Okay.
You have to test in your
And
local
how
machine.
much?
Hmm.
Yeah, how much memory will be available if 16 GB is RAM, for example?
Mm-hmm.
How much memory will be available for
So
storage?
whenever
Like some
whenever you when
50% of it.
yeah,
Mm.
whenever your program start, right? So
Mm.
JVM, they're called stack and heap. We'll come to that. I think you have some
Mm.
question. Okay. So the
Oh
heap,
yeah, there.
yeah, stack and heap will be there, right? So heap memory,
Mm.
it has the own default setting that this much heap
Mm.
memory will be assigned to this JVM, the program running, right? Now if you
Mm.
need some more memory, suppose your 16 GB memory and JVM is giving 2 GB for you, you need more, right?
Mm.
So Java has their
Mm.
own comment for that. Okay, Java, I
Mm.
forget that, something X or something like that, you have to see.
Oh, Excel is
Excel,
something.
yeah, something like that, yeah, XL. So
Mm.
by that you can tell to the JVM, hey, please increase it, right? Now suppose you have 2 GB
Okay, got
RAM
it.
and you put I need 4 GB, obviously your program will crash,
Mm.
right? So those things you have to
Mm.
tweak, you have to increase the load, right? And you have to figure it out like
Mm.
that. And that's why the cloud is
Okay.
coming into the picture and saving it. He is saving, boss, you no need to do anything. If the load is more, my another machine is ready, I will attach to it, correct? So
Mm.
in the cloud architecture, there are two concepts. One is called consumption based, right? So you forget about
Mm.
that. That is my headache. Whenever load is more, I
Mm.
attach to your program. Never gonna go to the out of memory. That is my headache. Correct.
Okay.
But when you
Mm.
use your local or your that's called in-house server,
Mm.
local server, that is your headache. Your network team need to, okay, this
Mm.
guy already told me that maximum 10 thread can be run. So I have to make something that
Mm.
12 threads should not run. This threading means think about the web, right? Where the
Mm.
request will come, right? So they have to put something,
Mm.
or my application only can handle 100 requests at a time. If 110
Mm.
requests come, my application gonna crash, right? So that's why the
Mm.
cloud come into the picture. So those things through the profiler you have to get it. Or in your local
Okay.
machine,
Okay.
you have to keep on increasing the load you can increase in many way. There are some tools are there that's
Mm.
called load tester generally do. They will keep on increasing the load
Mm.
and see how much it's working. You told 100 requests, they will test
Mm.
with 100 requests, right? They will not open the 100
Mm.
browser and work. They have some tool available which can button click
Mm.
can trigger 100,000 requests at a time to check. Those called the load
Okay.
tester, right?
Mm. And the CPU usage, is it directly in what way it is related to Java
Obviously,
program application? Uh,
obviously.
in which
See,
way? Mm.
CPS, think about this way, CPU and RAM should go in hand to hand. Example, CPU is what?
Mm.
CPU is processing your instruction. In your code, you write
Mm.
instruction, right? CPU
Yeah.
store it. and the RAM is
mm,
storing those instructions. It is not processing it. So think about CPU is your
mm,
mouth, right, which is eating the food,
mm,
and RAM is your
yeah.
hand who is giving the food, right? Example, I think people generally use.
Mm,
Now
mm,
suppose
yeah.
you have a balance with two hand and one mouth, right? Suppose you have four hand,
Mm,
then what will happen?
mm,
You have more task available, but CPU is not able to
mm,
eat it, right? Same thing in
yeah.
reverse. You have four mouth, example, and two hand. That means
Uh-huh.
you have more CPU, but you are not able to give more work,
Mm,
right? So those should be
mm,
balanced, right? So
mm,
that's why CPU has
understand. Yeah.
core and all that will come in down. You have some question will explain that, but that's how you have to
Uh-huh.
balance it. So that's why when the server
Mm,
setup, they have a popper. They will not do like that that very low level CPU and high level RAM, then it's not going to work, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay. Understood. Yeah. Understood.
Yeah, actually, really, you are asking this question are good. Means they are very, very basic, and many people don't understand, right? So that's how you can write a good code.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
These questions are really good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm
That's,
saying.
yeah.
Okay, let's go for the next question. What is that? Number six is, what does out of memory scenario work as, and how can we decide what is the yes, correct. So out of memory is happening what? There are two kind of memories there. One is called stack and one is called heap, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so out of memory can happen simple way when your program is asking for more memory and it is not available, right? So
Mm,
JVM I told, right? JVM is giving some 2 GB space, but in your program you
yeah.
are consuming more, right? So the out of memory
Yeah.
scenario we will get out of memory exception. So those exception you have to handle it, right? So in stack you have
Mm,
stack overflow error, right? And heap you have out of
mm.
memory. Out of memory mainly for the heap. Stack and heap, you understand what is stack, what is heap?
Yeah, stack. Yeah, I think some static data go to stack, and heap
Correct.
is other object data.
Yes, so stack means
Yeah,
like you create an integer x is equal to 5. Those go for stack,
yeah,
right? The static variable or the basic data type, and mainly the object
uh,
goes to the heap, right? You create a list,
yeah,
okay? So those are going for a
yeah,
heap, right? So static is very
yeah,
small portion, okay? And heap is the main
mm,
thing. And static means
yeah,
we don't control the static. Static is automatically getting full or getting clear, but heap is the place where the your program actually have to do the memory management, and that's why Java and .NET both has called GC, garbage collector, right? So the garbage
mm,
collector is the one who takes care about, okay, I figure it out, this particular object is not used now, it is got out of skip. Means how? Suppose you wrote one function called add, okay, and inside
mm,
that you create one object, okay, so that object is
mm,
used only to that function. So whenever that function execution is gone, finished, right, then the
mm,
garbage collector knows, okay, this object is not in use now, so he will clear that one, right? So that's the purpose of
yeah,
the garbage collector. Otherwise, if
mm,
your positions are not clear, then you need unlimited memory, right? So that's what the garbage
yeah, yeah,
collectors take care about that. Now when you write some
mm,
bad code and memory leak happen, what is
mm,
memory leak? Memory leak means garbage collector is not able to clear the object. There are some scenarios where
mm,
garbage collector is not able to clear, okay, we have to write our
mm,
exclusive code to clear it. Example is database
mm,
connections, okay, just this is a very unique example. Database connections, some more examples are there. File also, when you're
mm,
opening a file, that means you are creating some object, right? And that particular
yeah,
object, when the file has been reading is done or write operation is done, you have to explicitly close the file and clear the object through garbage.clear,
mm,
right? So if you don't do that, that
yeah,
means the object is sitting idle. Now think about the multi-threading application. 1,000 threads are running. That means 1,000 threads are getting created and object is still sitting there, though it is not in use. So those are called memory leak, right? So the profiler, basically profilers and all verify those memory leak. Okay, it will see, okay, this
mm,
particular object is used, now is gone, right? But still it is sitting. That means you have
mm,
some bad code. So they have to fix those
mm,
and then again run the profiler. Okay, now I can see the memory leak is reduced. So the memory leak, one of the
mm,
option or out of memory can come into the picture. That is coming for the bad code, right? So that's when the
mm,
experience come into the picture. That whenever you're writing database, you have to see the is properly closed or not, right? Some of the places what happen, people generally very like People generally do this mistake. They open the connection, right? Database connection is open and they forget to close it once the database fetch, read or write operation is done. So what will happen? Each database has a limitation. SQL Server, Oracle, it can only allow 1,000 connection at a time, right? But think about the Amazon, right? In one shot 1 lakh people is going. How? So the 1,000 records should be closed once the work is done, right? So the next 1,000 can come. Now if you don't close it, what will happen? Crash. Same thing here. Your RAM is fixed, memory is fixed, right? You cannot go beyond that. So whichever is not required, you clear it. So that's why garbage collector automatically does that. But some of the scenario we have to write it. So that's called like poor memory management, memory leaks, right? Or very large set data set. Example, you have a huge file, okay, and you try to load that one. That's why when your file is very big, suppose 500 MB, I'm just giving example, maybe in your scenario XML will not create that much, but suppose I have one
Yeah.
file called 500 MB, okay. So it's better
Yeah.
to not load whole the data in the memory, right? First you load maybe
Mm.
100 MB, process the data, clear it, take another 100 MB. Example, right? Suppose you have
Mm.
1 lakh record in the table, you only fetch 100
Mm.
record, do your transaction, parsing, logic, whatever it is, then you clear it,
Mm.
get another. Like that, you have to chunk it, right? So those things you have to
Yeah.
decide how do you chunk. And there is no fixed,
Mm.
okay, 1,000 will work. Not like that. You have to test it. If
Mm.
1,000 is working
Okay.
fine, maybe I will try with 5,000, right? So that's why the number you can put it in some setting file and keep on changing it to see how the memory is working, right? But in
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
basic term, memory out of memory occurs because of the poor code. Clear?
Mm.
So you can write some
Yeah.
Java, you can write some Java code to see it. What you can do, you can put one infinite loop, right? You put one infinite
Yeah.
loop, write a object, see what happening. Maybe after 5 minutes you can see the error. And suppose you have very
Mm.
low end machine, maybe after 1 minute you can see the error. Suppose mine is 16
Mm.
GB, it will take 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, I see
Mm.
the error, right? Memory is full, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Those are not fixed, it's depend on the server. You cannot say this. So the program differs, right? The same program can work different way if the machine is high end, right? And
Mm.
nowadays all program are multi-threading only. Nobody writes, right?
Yeah.
Automatically all are multi-threading. Your Spring Boot, you are
Yeah.
in the REST API, all are multi-threading, asynchronous and everything. Now it's
Yeah.
advanced, okay, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Understand. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you define consider? So DevOps team, what are the things you have to give? Right, that's the second question. How do you decide on system architecture needed for our application? How can I define, yeah. So system architecture again, it's defined based on your knowledge, right? Then in your scenario you use Kafka. That's a architecture
Mm.
decision. Why I use Kafka, right? That's again the distributed architecture they have implemented it. That means when my parsers are done his work, he will dump it in the Kafka, right? It will not directly talk with the root, right? Something like that.
This question
Hmm.
is not for that actually.
Okay, what is that then?
Mm, I've sent a message. Can you see that?
Okay, just a
Hey, here
minute.
on the Teams.
Okay,
So some like they give message like this.
just a minute. Okay.
Okay, they
So
say this is storage, this is RAM, this is CPU.
correct.
So then they say, is this enough for your application or you need more? Something like this. They ask. How do I understand whether it is enough, whether it is not enough? Like, so
So what
that's
you
what.
have to do is, suppose you take this particular machine, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
you run your program in a profiler, right? Which will show the maximum
Mm-hmm.
RAM has been used, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And maximum
Yeah.
CPU utilization has been used, correct? So
Mm-hmm.
first question you have to ask, my program will be used for load, right? When the load
Mm-hmm.
increase, the RAM and CPU also increase. Suppose you are writing a
Mm-hmm.
web programming, right? And you are writing a API
Mm-hmm.
call, you need to say, okay, maximum time in a one particular second, how many requests I can assume. They say 1 lakh, example. So you run 1 lakh record in your program, see the CPU
Mm-hmm.
uses and RAM uses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is 80% or maybe 70%, that will be their threshold. They will say, I think my application will sufficient for this particular machine, correct? You see,
Mm-hmm.
no, the in 16 GB RAM my machine is getting crash, it can only able to handle 50,000 record, right? Then you need to say like this particular program is able to handle in this configuration only maximum 50,000 records, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's called a client requirement. When client give the requirement to you, they mention the load. This is how my product will be used, and based on that you will write
Mm-hmm.
your code. If they say no, sometimes they say no, this particular program is internal, only 100 people is gonna use, you don't think about the performance,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when you're writing a
Mm-hmm.
program for stock market, they will say in 1 second 1 lakh record will be putting for order and all, right? So you have to think in different way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's how the architecture will be different. Then you have to
Mm-hmm.
change it, you have to use the cluster logic so that you can, because in one machine you cannot get more than that, right? Maybe 32 GB they are saying, that's fine, but not more than
Mm-hmm.
that. So you have to divide in multiple clusters, right? So you have to divide in multi,
Mm-hmm.
that's why the Java parser is no, not one. I think you have multiple Java parsers, right? Running in
Yeah,
different
yeah,
different machine.
multiple
Yeah,
answers. Yeah, yeah.
but the Java parser code will be same, I believe. There is no different code.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, same
So they
code.
run in
Yeah.
a different. So you have to test the Java parser in particular
Yeah.
machine, and you cannot.
Around 15, 20 instances will run, I
Yeah,
think, in
because you
one
have,
machine.
because you are getting lot of XML files, so that's why I divided it, right?
Yeah,
Suppose they say
yeah,
no
yeah.
boss, I have only one particular device, this is the device, and it will in one day it will just create one file. Then you will need only one Java parser and one very small
Yeah,
machine to run it. So that's how the architecture defined
yeah,
based on the load basically. Clear?
yeah, yeah.
And that's the thing we'll give to the DevOps team, and obviously everybody keeps buffer, right? So if you say DevOps team 80%, they will keep it 70%, because the DevOps team purpose is my server should not crash, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is based
Yeah.
on that you can define the architecture. Okay, low level.
So yeah, maybe I can. Yeah, understood.
Hmm.
Maybe I have to test something in local,
Yes,
say for one file,
correct,
and see what is that profiling you told. Right? With that, I
correct,
have to see how much
correct,
RAM and CPU was used.
correct. And then you
Then
increase the
I have to
load.
do mathematics
Yeah,
into 100 files or into 1000 files. What would be the need?
correct,
Similarly, I can define our DevOps team.
correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Then your next question would be, what is that? Let me put it here and read so that we can cover as much as possible. How can I decide whether my application is lightweight and heavyweight? How do I understand which is more memory thread? So it's the same thing. Through the profiler only I'm able to see the thread. They can see the thread number, memory uses. Memory is nothing but the RAM memory. CPU is the percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And lightweight, heavyweight, by writing to the code itself, you understand, right? Suppose in cloud environment, right? They say lightweight, it is
Mm-hmm.
nothing but called serverless architecture. You need for just simple task. I'm just giving addition
Mm-hmm.
one by one. Okay, or in your
Mm-hmm.
case, right, suppose
Mm-hmm.
that XML file you are saying, right, it has only one line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and your
Mm-hmm.
task is in that line those are comma separated. I'm just giving example, comma separated value. Your parser will
Mm-hmm.
do what? They will remove the comma, they will
Mm-hmm.
remove the comma and put hyphen and store in the database, correct? This is
Mm-hmm.
the job of the parser. Then it's a
Mm-hmm.
lightweight, you don't need any server,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can use the Azure function which will just do this simple task, replace
Mm-hmm.
comma with hyphen and store in the database. You can say lightweight, right? What happened to the
Yeah.
heavyweight? Heavyweight means you are doing lot of processing, that means lot of business rules you wrote in your code, right? You are validating this
Mm-hmm.
field, that field, okay, and there could be a 10 field in some file, there could be 15 field, means your application is huge, correct? And on top
Yeah.
of that your application is talking with Kafka to put the data in the topic, sometimes it's connecting to the
Mm-hmm.
database based on the scenario to store something. Your application is heavyweight application, right? So there is
Mm-hmm.
no thin line that if you go beyond it's a heavyweight, if you go thin weight. Lightweight means very simple task is doing, not more, right? And you can see the CPU memory
Mm-hmm.
is very less because nothing is there, no file operation, nothing, just getting the data, do some small manipulation and done, right? So that's why it's called the lightweight
Mm-hmm.
applications, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Generally what we do, the REST API call endpoints, right? We will write very lightweight, simple, take it, go to database, give the data. This is, you can say, lightweight, no much business rules, right? So like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your parsers are
Okay.
heavyweight, lightweight, unless we see the code we cannot say that, right? When you see the code and
Mm-hmm.
complex, then you can see yes, these are the heavyweight parsers.
Okay. 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 Understood. Yeah.
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 Then okay, what is this? Let's see. What is GC? GC I explained, the garbage collector. Heap memory, the stack and heap. That's the only thing. That's the concept. Heap memory, nothing else, right? All various performance metrics defined. Yes, those metrics you can only see through profiler. Okay, so you have mainly the for Java there's a free profiler called J profiler, right? So if you go to the programming and search for J profiler, right? J profiler. It's a free one. Okay, J profiler you can just install. Okay, and if you go images, I'll just showing that. See that. Okay, this kind of profiling you can see memory uses. Okay, then you have to go to their documentation and understand, because different profiler will be there. So you can ask in your project what profiler, because I think you will not be able to install anything new to your client in your office laptop, right? So there could be the inbuilt profiler. So if you profiler is very easy to run, it will just attach to the IDE like Eclipse or IntelliJ whatever, and it will show this kind of memory thing. So profiler will tell you, and each profiler is different. Suppose Grafana you say, right? Grafana is one thing, right? If you go here and search for Dynatrace, generally I use Dynatrace, right? Dynatrace monitoring. If you go, it's the same thing do like Grafana, right? But its UI is different. That means you have to read Dynatrace and understand it. You have to read Grafana and understand it. Same thing. You have to read J profiler and you have to understand this. Suppose if you different profiler, but through the profiler you can get the data basically, right? So that is the through that we can get the performance, right? Then what is system health? How do, yeah, system health is nothing but what? Two things: system health, the server health. Only two things they check. What? Mainly two things: CPU uses and memory uses. Others could be network uses, but that is not much. Mainly the CPU and memory, right? When the CPU and memory is red, my server health is gone, right? But if you read Grafana, you can maybe you can see for others details also, from where traffic is coming and all these things, right? Suppose if you put the Grafana details here, right? So it's different. It means which tools you are using, but the concept is same, right? Concept will be same, correct?
I
Suppose
think
if
I was seeing some yeah, which method took long time to execute, which query took long time, or
correct,
which
correct,
how
correct,
much volume of data that
correct,
query is was
correct,
fetched.
correct.
And these kind of things they are monitoring.
Correct.
Yeah.
So in the Grafana, you can put lots. Suppose your code, you can put your database also query, you can put. It's different. That's why the people is Grafana or Dynatrace is paid version. That's why you are not using it. Grafana is free, right? So you can grab all those things and put it dashboard. It's based on the client. That's why client, oh, I don't need database. I need only something memory. So they will put. It's a customizable, right? But the logic is same. Your program or your machine is giving some input, then only it's able to draw the data, right? Now that data, how do you define, is up to you, up to the client, how you manipulate the data. Only, okay, show me the server which shows only 80% more. You have 5 server, only the 3 is there, so only 3 will populate here. So it's up to the logic how we write it, right? But mainly the metrics will come from here, correct?
Okay. Yeah.
And then the last question what we have, I think we are able to cover all good. Is how OS play role with our application? Yes, number of cores. Yeah, cores you understand, right? What is core?
Core, yeah, NCP course, yeah, no, I
So
think it is.
i7, yeah, let's go there and see. Okay, so Intel currently is Intel i7, right? Intel i7 core and thread. Okay. Okay, so core is means core is a box, you can say, right? So you have 4 cores, 8 core. In i7 itself you have different numbers will be there. When you go, your CPU cost will also be more, right? So core is nothing but, and general proportion is differ, but I Intel generally do that one core can handle 2 thread. Okay, generally they handle that because Intel now is a multi-threading, they call HT or something like that, technology is there, where, but before it was like one core one thread, right? Now generally they are saying one core can handle two. So suppose you have 4 thread, right? Sorry, 4 core processor, then minimum 8 thread continuously can run, right? And top of that, these are all chip level concept, means the microchip, right? Even you have the GPU, right? CPU is the central processing unit. GPU is when you play game and all, right? The graphical processing unit. You have more multi-threading processes can be run. Okay, that's how the core,
Yeah.
and this thing you cannot differ, right? Because see, Azure, when you go to Azure or AWS, they have the machines. Okay, I have eight core 16 GB machine, price is this much, right?
Mm.
I have 4 core
Yeah.
8 GB machine, price is this much, right? So same thing in your
Mm.
local also have the i3, i5 or i7, right? So you can run your
Yeah.
program and see how it's happening. But this only occurs for
Mm.
multi-threading application, right? So there are
Mm.
two concepts called multi-threading and multitasking. Suppose here I am
Yeah.
multitasking because I open the browser, right? I am opening
Mm.
the Word document. So the task, right? So what
Mm.
CPU is doing
Mm.
when the word is there, CPU is giving importance to my Word document, right? So they are doing the
Mm.
multitasking. And the minor level is called the multi-threading. Okay, so when we learn the
Mm.
multi-threading, then we'll see how the threading and task is differ. Okay, task is a number
Yeah.
of thread is doing, right? So that's how is
Yeah.
that context switching and all will come for the multi-threading concept. Context
One
switching
second.
for
Yeah.
thread, context switching for task. So all those things are coding,
Mm.
but that's how the core and
Mm.
threads are related. Basically, when you have more core, you
Yeah.
can process more code, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Honest. So all this core, CPU, RAM, all these are interrelated, and
Correct,
the memory usage.
correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Understood.
this
Okay. Getting
question
that
will
now.
never come when you go to the cloud, right? Cloud will not expose because they know if they give the low level memory, right? When the load is more, they will attach one more, and increase
Mm.
load, they'll attach one more. They'll keep on attaching, right? Something like that.
Mm.
So that's why they will go for the cloud as of now. Everyone is going for cloud because of that reason. You will never go out of memory,
Yeah.
out of person, right? Something like that.
Yeah. I think in our company also GCP or something they're using.
They are using GCP, okay, Google Cloud, okay.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
concepts are same, okay. Concepts are same. The
Yeah.
names are different product names, okay.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay.
Okay.
So, do you have any question on this? At least you are able to complete in one session, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I got, yeah, these connections only I wanted to know how
Okay.
these things are connected with
Let
each
me
other.
stop the